Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am excited for this episode. Before I introduce the show, here's a quote just for this episode. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Henry David Thoreau. We are back for part 8 of the Culture Matters podcast with the one and only Tony Capullo, mentor to many, friend to the Culture Matters podcast, advisor to those smart enough to listen. And today, today he's got a guest on that seems to be me.
You are the guest. Is this part 6 or 7? I don't know.
I believe it's 8.
Is it 8?
God, I hope I'm right on that number.
That's amazing. Well, Jay, how you doing?
I'm better than good, better than most.
Better than those. Well, Jay, we've it's been quite a journey on these interviews.
I can't wait for the next one.
Well, here it is. And I'm gonna dive right in. And what I want to address is I want to go into your expertise with culture, because this is called Culture Matters. Oh, I have a note. I'm making myself a note here. Okay, so here's the first question. I've got so many good ones, but I'm trying to figure which one I want to go first. I want to talk about what you believe are the key cultural competencies that leaders possess.
Cultural competencies.
Yep. What are they?
Well, first, it's like a manager that doesn't listen will alienate their people, right? We spend a lot of time thinking for others if we start a business because we're trying to solve the problem of our customer. Once we solve enough problems of our customer, let's say we're a founder, well, then we have other people around us that have to solve their customers. So we can't just think for them too. We've got to help them think. And listening to our employees helps them think. If they bring us a problem, they bring us a question, a concern, or just bring us any dialogue, the quality of our questions will increase or decrease their ability to think, their ability to rationalize, to learn. So a core competency of culture is idea meritocracy. Ideas being brought forth to the table, being heard, being filtered, being synthesized, the collaborative, cooperative, cultural competency, right? Cooperating with our people so we can compete in the marketplace, not competing with our people, which undermines our competition of the marketplace. That's
Good
one.
Good answer. Keep going.
Oh, cultural competencies. What's the story? Like, why do we exist as an organization? Where do we come from? Is there an originating story? Like, is there a founding story? Could there be one if we thought about it more deeply? Like, example, in 2015, I recognized the value of culture when I got my team together and we talked about why we were working so hard, what our values were, why we thought they were those, or why we thought they weren't. There were people that raised their hand and fought back in those meetings and said, I don't believe culture matters. And my interaction with them was, and it was genuine. It was, well, what do you mean? So culture matters started with this conflict of me thinking it mattered, subordinates thinking it didn't, me wanting to know what they thought that led them to that conclusion that it didn't, camaraderie being built, meaningful relationships transpiring. And all those years ago, I was inspired to study companies with great culture, to create great culture, to figure
Right.
out what culture. So like that's a founding story. And if I were to elucidate on it, right, I made mistakes. Do, I didn't show up in the best light. So I strove to, and like I keep going up. So a founding story is a part of core, cultural competency. What's the language of the organization?
I know I asked you this question once before, but I want to again, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. And the reason is, I think it's an interesting. I think the answer is going to be very interesting. So, in one of the previous episodes, I asked it, but I'm going to reframe this. One of the questions that I get a lot is whenever I tell somebody what I do, they go, "Oh, how'd you get into that? Like, what made you do that?" Right? Culture is such a unique thing, right? I mean, you're the only person I know. Well, I mean, there are business coaches that say they address it, but you do it exclusively. Like you go to the minutia, you go to the granular stuff. They do it kind of 30,000 feet, right? At what point do you say to yourself, did you say to yourself, I want to be a culture expert, a company culture expert? Because it is unique, right? And I want to say this, because I come across a lot of business coaches, right? And I told somebody last night at a dinner, I said, they were talking about business coaches. And well, now the business the coaching the coaching market is saturated because everybody's a coach, right? Business coach, life coach, right? Fitness coach, whatever it is, right? But so here's what I want to say to you. If a lot of them will say, well, this is what I deal with, and they'll start telling you what they do. And I'll say, oh, so you mean culture? And they'll say, yeah, culture. Oh, but you are specifically culture. You say it's culture, right? And you don't just do it like you assess their existing culture, right? They don't do that, right? You have methods where and tools that you use to, right? And you
Yes.
right. So at what point, where you said 2015. So at some point you said, I have a very good grasp of what culture is, how to impact it, how to measure it, how to improve it. So like at what point do you say to yourself, this is what I want to do? And before you did that, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be successful. I wanted to own a business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
You did.
Ever since I could remember.
Okay.
I wanted to move out of the metaphorical basement because I grew up in a great way in a literal basement for what I can remember the beginning, a beautiful basement with my adopted mother, who I love and who loved me, and our metaphorical patriarch and matriarch, which was my aunt and uncle, who were also family that were very important in my adolescence, role models. And I wanted to be successful like them because they really were a team, worked together, worked towards something. We were living in their fruit. We had the privilege of being helped by them. And when that ended, because there's a season to everything, we left that environment. Things changed for me. It was like a dark period. In hindsight, helpful because there's less external entitlement, and now there's more psychological entitlement that I'm burdening. But the desire to be successful, the drive to someday be successful was there. Entrepreneurship was where my interest lied. My academic interest died for a period of time and has been resuscitated through entrepreneurship. I was raised in a family of teachers, another, blessing in and around that. Teachers, and entrepreneurs. So the desire to be successful was there. The culture question and answer is tough for me because there's a bunch of answers I have. I thought about it so much that I almost have an opaque answer because there's too many answers. It's like, I'm when we had our operation, our business, myself, my former partner, the culture that we had curated was something out of a movie. And the elements fascinated me because partly it was me being whatever I am. Example, someone that brings people together. There's others that don't bring people together. Well, bringing people together is part of culture. Integrating, creating dialogue, creating bonds, love and belonging. Telling a story, like why we're going where we're going, and articulating how I think or we think we're going, and then let's figure that plan out together. That creates community, creates an environment of purpose. We were doing these things, and I had been introduced to more and more literature that sparked it, whether, did it spark a curiosity or did it reveal a destiny? I try to figure these things out, these unfigurable things out. Culture, people is culture, and people at the bottom of any business is people being served products and services, and people serving products and services. So to me, it's some of it's, natural, a lot of the unnatural or the learned, knowledge has more revealed what seems so natural. So that's part of my answer. Is almost another. Those that work with our firm say that I'm a business advisor, a consultant, have coaching qualities, but they talk about that. They share that with others. It's more that, and I would say that culture is business. Business is culture. The question is, how deep do we go in our business learnings and our business addressing of conflicts and concerns? And our approach as a firm is with depth and breadth. We go deep with our client partners. And so if you're going to go deep, you're going to understand the human condition as you build your organization to profit more, to innovate more, and to succeed at the highest level possible. So I would just say that those that consider themselves business coaches and consultants, we have to understand the terms and the definitions. A coach is a guide. A consultant is likely analytically addressing and analyzing and delivering information and theses. An advisor may be a sounding board. Like, these words are used interchangeably and I would argue in congruent with their meanings. A sharp, the sharpest knife in the stack is going to ideally be able to navigate behaviorism in all of them. Like, there's a guiding aspect to how I interact with CEOs. There's a analytical, consultative, observing methodology. There's a authoritative, oratorical, or speaker behaviorism. So to be able to interchange is just adds to someone's value in theory, I would say, to whoever they're working with, to be able to be that coach or be that advisor and be that consultant. I have studied all of them and attempt to bring all of them into our work with our client partners and as a firm.
how do you stay updated on the global cultural trends and changes?
The global cultural trends and changes. I think how I personally stay updated is continual reading. You know, like someone, and I hold that in high regard, but whether that's listening to audiobooks, reading articles, reading magazines, reading books. If one is going to be in the profession of service, serving others in positions of power, influence, authority, they're working on behalf of the company. Those would be the managers, the executives, the ownership. They're working. Part of the value that the external service providers like advisors and so on bring is information. So study is a big part of the job, in my belief, to be valuable, right? Not just a sounding board, but an informed sounding board, because the client is, if they're doing what they need to be doing, they need to be working in the trenches, meaning communicating with their people, listening to their people, planning, digesting information contextually relevant to the actual company. And yeah, a lot of them start reading more and developing more if they're interacting with us. But that's a value that we provide, right? Reading, so you have to do less of it in a sense. So that's a big piece of it. Staying up to date is really, I don't know how to do anything other than go with depth. So to the core of the issues, you can start to speculate on where things are going, see where the puck is going. So reading is a big part of it.
Okay, so and I did want to ask you this, as really more to do with you personally. Do you travel a lot, and you lived in Philadelphia, and then you live in Florida primarily, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
no one knows, but now they just found out. Yeah,
oh, sorry.
I'm just.
So what is, tell me, so you're from Philadelphia to Florida is a big deal. So what is that? What's the difference you notice in the culture of the cities?
Well, I haven't spent a lot of time in the Florida, although yes, we do reside here. It seems very transient, right? People pass through. My neighbor told me, you're not a Floridian unless you live here for 5 years, and that makes sense. People come to Florida. There's a level of escapism, I think, in Florida is a state that attracts those that are seeking, is in my estimation. They say Philly was the city of brotherly love. I don't think I stayed long enough to find out. So I fit more into the transient seeking culture, I think, which makes sense why we're here in Florida. But that's about as much as I can say, is that I think it attracts those that are looking for something. Florida. And I think Philadelphia was more of a happenstance. There's a deeper story behind that for another day. And I have nothing great to say. It's funny, I was going to say I have nothing bad to say about Philadelphia, but that's like the people that of course they do. That's why they're saying that. So I'd rather just say that I think I didn't integrate into the culture. So it's just like if somebody is part of a company and then they leave, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was the worst company ever, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the worst employee ever, but it could be a little bit of both.
This was just an impromptu question because I just thought of it, but I'm going to ask it because that's a lot of how my questions with you are asked. Philadelphia, Florida. You spent a lot of time in New Jersey, Atlanta. Let's fast forward to how many years in Jay Doran decides to retire, where is he? He may not be in one place, but where's his primary home?
I
Is
don't
it back,
know.
back to Philadelphia?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think home, yeah, I could say that the home that I have now is because of who I have it with and how we treat it and the respect we demonstrate for the bricks and the mortar and what's inside the walls and outside the walls, the level of response ability to the problems that arise with home management. And right, it's an extension of the relationship that I've curated and been cultivated with me, with my partner. And there's a level of discipline, I think, when it comes to settling in, because the world is so big and so vast. And I don't think there's a lot. I don't want to run forever. Right. I'd like to understand. And I think part of understanding is staying in place long enough to face what I've run from. So we're going to stay here long enough to face to face whatever it is. And as far as, things change when you have more resources, relationships, resources, reasons to be a global citizen, to be able to book a flight and go anywhere in the world. It opens up a lot of opportunities that are not opportunities because they're distractions. So it's a constant audit. And luckily for me, being in a relationship, I don't get to decide. It's an interaction. So I could say whatever the hell I want to right now, but I've got to argue about that with my spouse and figure out what we want to do. So I can't just go based on my impulse. Oh, I'm going to Hong Kong for the next 7 years because I had a bad argument with a client.
Well, listen, if you're in Hong Kong, I'll come see you because I was always wanted to go.
Yeah, it's a tough, because I it's just funny. No, I love the question. I mean, it's what I think it's important to stay put for a bit.
How
travel for, obviously, we go to our client partners and work with them in the trenches to build shareholder value. I mean, that is part of the commitment when you're going to go about the type of culture that we have, that we want. It's a lot of travel.
So that I spend a lot of time in the Florida Keys, as you know. And when people ask me, like, what is it you like about it? And I say, it's the culture. And they're like, the culture. And I don't know if this makes any sense, but yeah, it's the culture. And the reason is because the culture is very laid back, it's very nonchalant, it's almost the antithesis of who I am as a person. But the first time I went down there, I thought, wow, I mean, all these people, like even when you go down all the way, you go south, southernmost point, you go to Key West, those people are, and I was always entertained by this, and I don't know why. Is that the culture was most of not all of them, but most of the people you run into there, and sometimes you'd go down for a weekend and see the same people all the time. They're former drug runners and pirates and shrimpers and boaters, and right, and they're running from the IRS or a bad marriage or an ex, and they're all just there, in the city tolerates them, right? It's kind of where they feel comfortable. And I thought, this is kind of a cool place. Not that I would fit in there like that, but I always found it very, I don't know. I just thought it was a cool place. I just thought this is so different than anywhere. I was raised in Pembroke Pines, and that's so far from that, right? It's only 3.5 hours, but it seems like it's another world, right? But I love the culture of it. And the first time I was there, I remember leaving I'm thinking, I got to come back to this place. I mean, I have to come back. And it was only a few hour drive, and I just kept going back and back and back. And the more I got there, the more I started to get to know people that live there. And I said, "What's it like to live here?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" "Yeah, what's it like? I mean, like just just like you see it. That's it, right? This is how we live. It's a 5 mile island, right?" And that always had some attraction.
That's really helpful, I think, from just if I'm thinking of the listener, how you said that's how we live. Yeah, how we live, how we work, that will reveal the culture. I say reveal because there's an infinite amount of ways to represent people. And the arguments can be derived around, well, what are the best ways? What do you mean by best? Well, what are our goals? What are our objectives? Do we want more profit? Do we want more R&D? Do we want more retention? Do we want, what do we want? And then, because when you're talking about engineering a culture, you can actually undermine the culture greatly.
Okay.
Now,
I believe that.
Oh, it's the natural occurrence. So the question becomes, well, how do you not undermine something you care about? The answer to that question fascinates me, and it undergirds our work with building businesses, because that's what we do. We build businesses. And the question becomes, well, what is a business? And then that delves deep into vast theories and formula that have been developed over the last X amount of years in the literature that many people don't have access to. Those that work every single day and build businesses into the hundreds of millions and into the billions and beyond, that they don't actually have access to this information. And well, who's going to give it to them? And what if they did? Could they do it faster, with a higher quality, with more meaning? And if the answer is, well, maybe, well, then I'm in. And that's what we do.
Another question I've never asked you. I have another culture question, but before I ask that, I want to ask you.
Okay.
How do you relax?
I read. Also, and or
do you ever just sit and watch Netflix movies?
Yeah, we really enjoy doing that. The thing is, I made a commitment not to watch TV not to watch TV until we succeeded in one of our outcomes with one of our client partners. And that was over a year ago. And we still haven't succeeded. So I won't be watching TV until that's done. It could be another.
Well, that's an interesting take. So tell me, because you have an outcome based mentality, right? Which is how most people.
Without that, we would just not be able to be retained.
Well, I agree, but a lot of people do business and they don't feel that. They think, well,
a lot of what I do is strategy. So, it's not just the plan of 30 years from now. It's what happens to us when we actually can plan 30 years from now. Having someone to help someone think 30 years from now forces them to look at their past and address the present concerns. That creates value. So, in the spirit of those interactions, sometimes I'll get myself in a circumstance where I might make a commitment that is ridiculous. But sometimes it's fun to make commitments of ridiculous things, because then it forces me to grow. So you asked what I do to relax. I mean, I could eat an edible and relax. I could,
yeah, right.
I could, there's plenty of things to relax that I choose not to do based on commitments and responsibility, accountability, really. And then, the responsibility to keep my commitments. So, what I currently do to relax, though, is read, although that wouldn't be the highest, because ultimately it's not something that takes
But
a lot
it's,
out of me to do it. So that's
I
not
was
really
just,
a
that
proficient answer.
realization to you?
Yes and no. So let's go with no, and then I gave you the other answer, but I'm not doing that right now. So I haven't relaxed in a while.
How many hours of sleep a night? On a good night.
Yeah, I think 8, 9.
You do, okay.
Oh, yeah, my temperament, I could be awake for a day and a half and then sleep for 2, and that would be like where if I was in a less healthy environment. Now I'm more linear because of my relationship and how I've matured, or what I don't do with my body. More linear, yeah. So go to bed. It's very important to me to, if I don't wind down, I'm going to be up all night thinking. Yeah.
You're an interesting guy, and everybody finds you an interesting guy. So I like asking these personal questions. So, and this is like a complete random question, but if you could eat one thing every day, forget how much fat is in it, and forget what would that one thing be?
If I didn't have to eat, I wouldn't.
What?
Yeah, if I didn't have to eat, I wouldn't. I would. It would be great. I wish I
I mean,
didn't.
you're a big guy. You got to eat. So
Yeah, I just wish I didn't have to.
okay, but you do. So
Don't
pick one.
enjoy it and don't want to enjoy it. And which is the most, yeah, that's another irony. Like culture, man. Food is so important for culture. I mean, it's part of life, and we
Yeah,
build
I mean,
relationships when we eat together. Um, I don't have an honest answer for that. I think I just be giving some BS. I don't. It's a good psychological question for me. What would I eat? A ham and cheese sandwich. That's like an inside joke. I'll tell you offline. Yeah, I'm not a big foodie.
okay, but just pick something. Pizza,
Yeah, something that would help.
a Philly cheesesteak.
Popcorn.
Okay.
Popcorn.
Okay. Um, Popcorn. All right. These are interesting questions, by the way. I mean, because it goes into who you are as a person, how you relax, how much you sleep, what you eat. I mean,
Yeah,
people.
don't really relax. Don't sleep well. Don't like food. I'm a prime date. That's why I'm blessed to have a great partner. That's wonderful.
What makes you sad?
Uh, I don't. What makes me sad, I think, is not being taken seriously.
And who doesn't take you seriously? Why would they not take you?
I believe people that know me do, but that's been a big gripe in my life: is not feeling heard, not feeling believed in or believed, and therefore I became a speaker.
Let's
So
talk about I
that,
want to before we run out of time because we're
yeah,
down to. But I want to talk about the speaking thing. You're very well spoken. In fact, you may be the best, most well spoken person I know. Right? Very well read, and you know that. So no desire to get to be on stages.
I have an immense desire to be on stage. I was born to be on stage. The issue was that I couldn't handle it. Speaking because I need to be heard versus speaking because I have something to say, two stark, the difference of that reality is stark to me. So now that I've taken years away from the stage, I desire to say some things. And so I have a great interest in speaking. I want that ratio of speaking because I have something to say to be just at least 1% greater than the desire to be heard, which I don't know if that's ever going out of my body. But I have faith that I'll continue to grow and maybe mature, work through some of my demons. So great interest in the speaking, and it comes naturally to me.
So
There's pros and cons to that.
yeah, this is, tell me if this is an accurate observation of you. A lot of people have said to me, "Oh, I want to speak," and I'm not a speaker's bureau, right? But they always say to me, "Oh, I want to speak. Can you give me a stage? I want to speak," and I'll do that. Now, if I find the right opportunity for somebody else, I did really for Christian Conti, right?
He's great.
He's unbelievable, right? So, but most people, not him, they speak because I got a text message last night from somebody. It was a video of him that he took. Yes, I don't know who took it, but he was on the stage, and he goes, "Look, standing ovation." I get it. There are people who speak for ego. They need that immediate return, immediate feedback, and then there's people who have something to say because it's valuable. You're the person that has something to say. You have some very valuable information. Would you say that's accurate? Because you don't really, in the time I've known you, you don't have an ego. At least I've never encountered it. I mean, everybody has some, but you don't have it.
I hope that I think, I don't know. And if that means that I don't in this moment, I'll take that, sure. But I definitely am insecure. And like, meaning, and the reason I bring that up is like, right, what is insecure? It's unfixed, it's broke, like it's unfixed, it's not steady in state. There's an inversion. It's like pulling a bow, an arrow, right? The bow back to let go of the arrow to hit the target. My insecurity, my lack of secureness has led me to action. It's led me to strive to act, to desire. So I think that's a great, gulf deeply in who I am, and I attempt to burden or I do the best I can to attempt to not let that become, let's say I succeed, a great pride, or like a false pride, as best I can. But that's so yes and no. It's how is the ego utilized? Is it utilized to ultimately create more value for those, for myself and those around me, or is it like only creating value for me? And I think of that a lot. It's how.
Again, when we get to this last 15 minutes, I always rush because I never want to. Always, but you just said something I thought fascinating. And it's unusual. You just said I'm insecure.
Yeah.
You're so authentic that you'll say that, which tells me you're really not, because most people who are secure themselves, that's kind of how I look at it. You're so secure with who you are, you're okay to say that to people. 99.9% of the people will never say that because they don't want people to be vulnerable. They don't want to say, "Hey, I'm weak," right? I mean, that's phenomenal to be able to say that, that's who you are. Someone else, I don't remember who was saying it to me. Somebody, I think, yeah, I know who it was. So you interviewed somebody who was saying, "Wow, that guy, he's like amazing, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was saying, "Well, the guy's really smart, right?" And I'm like, "Yep." And the one thing the person said was, he's really interested in learning. And you told me that when you interview people, you try to learn.
Yeah, I do.
And I think it's a tribute to you that you like. I have heard you say to me, and this is important for people to listen to because it is important for me to listen to. I listen to my own words. You don't take like someone giving constructive criticism as criticism, you take it as learning, whereas most people get very defensive. And I always thought you're always willing to learn. You're always willing to get better. And I just think that is just unbelievable because it's so rare. I don't know where you got that trait, but man, it's a gift because I will tell you the people I deal with, then none of them are like that. And they may even know that they're wrong. They're not like that. They don't want to be told, here's how you improve. Because when you say, here's how you improve, I'll listen, I'm guilty of it. So I'm just telling you, right? So I'll give you an example. And this is not a business example. I was in the gym one day and I was hitting a heavy bag, right? And I've taken boxing lessons for years, right? And all that stuff. And this girl came up to me and she attempted to corrected how I was doing something. And instead of saying, you know what, you're right, the first thing the ego said, who are you to tell me? I didn't say that to her, but I was like, this little girl's going to tell me how to hit a bag. I've been doing this for years. And then I caught myself. So, and it is an impulsive response.
Yes.
Right? It is, but you're
Yes.
not like, and so that's a long way of saying you're not like that. And it's impressive.
I do the best I can to not. So being open to criticism creates culture because it's an open feedback loop. There's a level of forgiveness in it. It's like I have to be humble. I have to humble myself. I have to serve my counterpart. And I have to let a part of myself die so I don't literally die, if you take it literally. Let the idea die, the thought die, not me. So a lot of time conflicts happen that don't get worked out interpersonally because we'd rather be right than effective. Or
Yeah. You're right.
So if we're going to work together, and there's a love aspect to it, there's a wanting to be loved to it. And at the same time, we need order because Tony, you might be a better guy to be in an alleyway with. If someone's trying to stab us, I'm saying,
Yeah, I hope not.
how are you? Yeah, I'm saying, hey, I'm Jay. What's your name? And then you're just defending us, right? So I'm hoping that my smile and pleasing personality would lead to that potential murderer to rethink their position and drop the knife and just remember that they once were a child and a potential, sibling and a friend, and you might just kind of punch them in the face.
I don't know. Well,
and if we play our series of events out, for every 9 times that we get killed because of me, one time we could have saved that person from purgatory.
Well, I know one thing. We both turn around and run. Okay, we both turn around and run. Because I'm sure you could outrun me, right? So
on a good day, maybe, I don't know.
No, I'm sure you can. I mean, so that's
what do you
funny.
think the takeaway for the people today is?
I think the takeaway is really about. I think when we delved into who you are and your how you're made up and your mindset, I think there's such a great takeaway that you can be authentic and open to learning and not be so defensive about criticism. And Christian Conti, I go back to him because he deals with a lot of stuff like that. Is how not to be defensive. He did a video recently, and it was called "How Not to Be Manipulated."
Wow.
And it was phenomenal. And he said there's certain kinds of people that are just open to being manipulated. And one of them, people who don't have low self-esteem, right? People right. And I think that you're just so comfortable in your own skin that, and it's like, it's unusual. I'm not. Listen, I take a lesson from this.
Where do you think
The big,
it's helpful in culture?
the big difference between the two of us is I love to eat. So, what was that, Jay?
Well, complementarity of teams is a lesson because we're all different and we bring unique skills to the table, and the quality of our conversations will lead to our ability to solve problems together, because no one person could solve all the problems of life or business. But my question was, how do you think, what if any quality practical takeaways for culture?
I think when you hit on the cultural competencies, right? Because someone will hear those and compare themselves. I mean, if they want to know if they're effective, right? If they're a leader, how do I compare to what he said?
And they might say, oh, well, my people aren't ... That might be a call to the people that you have on your team. You don't trust them, so why are they on your team?
Right.
If you can't let them go, well, what is it about you that you don't trust? That goes for clients, that goes for anything. So, all right, that's fair. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Hold on one second before you go. Okay, so I do want to. I have our topic for the next interview. Look,
I can't wait. It looks amazing.
yeah, it's about leadership communication.
You want to do it tonight? Because my 6 p.m. podcast just canceled on me.
I can't I actually have a client in town. I went to dinner with them last night. I'll be tonight and then Sunday morning breakfast. So
all right, well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, they're from Denver. Yeah. I don't know if you ever met
Definitely
her.
do that. No, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, let me end this podcast so we don't give too much of your personal life on this show. I forgot we never even ended the show. I mean, that's fine because it's more authentic. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to this episode, and we will see you next time at the Culture Matters podcast.